Let's talk about internet security and more specifically DNS over HTTPS or DOH, along with DNS filtering in Twingate. DOH and DNS filtering are very important to us because they allow you to make your employees and staff a lot more secure, whether they're connecting to Twingate resources or connecting to things that are altogether unrelated to Twingate. Now, as an admin, if I wanted to systematically encrypt all DNS traffic coming out of all devices that my employees use, and if I wanted to implement DNS filtering, all I would need to do would be to go to the Internet Security tab, and under Secure DNS, I would just click on Enable Secure DNS here. Now, you have two options. Twingate comes with its own native features for DNS filtering and DOH, but it also allows you to integrate to a third-party DNS provider. We're going to cover mostly the native features, but we'll talk a little bit about third-party DNS later. If I enable Secure DNS that is native to Twingate, all of my clients across my tenants now benefit from the encryption of DNS, so DNS over HTTPS, and also benefit from DNS filtering. So by default, we do implement certain security categories that we block, and we'll go in the detail of what can be configured here. Now, the one thing that's important to note is that when you protect all of your employees, you still have the option to create exceptions and declare that certain groups should not be under the protection of DOH or DNS filtering. And the second thing that's an interesting point to make here is that we have a fallback method, which means that if your DNS resolver for some reason becomes unavailable and cannot respond, then you will fall back on either actually nothing and fail the resolution, or you want to fall back on the system's DNS on the user's device. We obviously recommend strict, but both are possible here. Now, when it comes to DNS filtering, there's a lot of things that you can customize. And so if you click on any of those, right, you can open up a different menu to add domains that you want to explicitly allow, add domains that you want to explicitly block, such as let's add lego.com. But it's not just about blocking and allowing specific and explicit domains. You can also toggle on and off different security categories that we define. Those are from lists that are documented and constantly updated. And by default, we activate a lot of them. Now, you also can filter on content. Those are the options available to you here. And finally, you have the option to provide a little bit more privacy to your end users by blocking trackers and related things. Now, that's what it is when it comes to the configuration of DNS filtering and DOH. In terms of administration, we report on all of the queries that are sent to Twingate, the ones that are blocked, the ones that are not blocked, and you have the ability to take a look at blocked queries and show some details as to what public IP and what device the block came from. And we can actually see this if I go to, let me connect to my tenant. And now that I'm connected, let me go to lego.com. It can be reached because it's being blocked. Now we're going to add a splash page to our DNS filtering soon that will indicate to the end user that they're being blocked because the domain lego.com has been added to the deny list. But this is how the DNS filtering function works. And again, I will be able to see this eventually and relatively soon in my list of events here. This is my public IP now, and the device in question. Now, providing DOH and DNS filtering capabilities is one thing, but most of our customers want to provide such protection for their users, whether their users are connected to their Twingate client or not connected to the Twingate clients. There's a couple of things you can do in order for the protection to be expanded beyond a user being logged into their Twingate client. The first thing you can do is you can leverage what we call machine keys. You know, in version 1 of the machine key, all you have to do is create a small JSON file that has your network tenant name here, and then push this file over to all macOS and Windows devices for your staff under the paths that are specified here. And once those files are deployed, you don't need to restart the client or anything. What that does to the client is that it removes the logout and disconnect button and also removes the quit button, which means that once a user is logged in, they no longer have the ability to disconnect and quit or quit the Twingate client. Now, it still means that they would need to connect and authenticate against the client when their machine starts. For them to benefit from DOH and DNS filtering, it just makes it harder for them to shut it down once they're logged in. Now, we still want to provide security over DOH and DNS filtering to customers for employees that are not logged into the Twingate clients, because being secure shouldn't be a thing that only happens when you're connected to the client. So if that's what you want to implement, you can implement the same concept of machine keys. The format is a little bit different, and those machine keys are created in the admin console actually under client configuration here. So you have the ability to generate those keys here. And those machine keys are going to be specific to tenants. You don't need a machine key per device, and you're going to do exactly the same thing. You're going to provision those machine keys, and you're going to dispatch or distribute those machine keys to your devices via MDM. The subtle difference between the machine key in version 1 and version 2 is that in version 2, not only does it remove the quit and the logout and disconnect buttons, but it also provides DOH and DNS filtering even if the client is not authenticated. So if the user starts their machine and they're connected to the internet, but they haven't logged on to the client, and you've deployed a machine key version 2, they will benefit from DOH and DNS filtering even if they're not authenticated. The final thing you can do is also to deploy tooling, the launch agent, for instance, on macOS to prevent the client from being killed by more savvy users who are going to try to kill its processes. You can do it on Mac. You can also do it on Windows using different, like a detection script and a remediation script. Both are possible. Now, the final piece to talk about in internet security is if you don't want to rely on Twingate's native DNS over HTTPS and DNS filtering, you can still enable Secure DNS, but instead rely on a third-party DNS. Now, all of the providers you see here are going to provide by default DNS over HTTPS, but they do not include DNS filtering. Depending on the resolver you select, you may or may not benefit from DNS filtering. In fact, out of this list, if you use the first 3, I don't think you can leverage DNS filtering, but if you use the next DNS one, I believe, depending on how it's configured and integrated with, you can get next DNS to do DNS filtering when it receives all of the DNS queries. You could also configure a custom DOH resolver that, depending on what technology you're using, may or may not provide DNS filtering abilities. The question is really, because the endpoint you're specifying here is going to receive all DNS queries, does that endpoint and technology have the ability to filter those DNS queries? If the answer is yes, then you will benefit from DNS filtering on top of DOH via the third-party DNS integration. If the answer is no, then you will only benefit from DOH, but we can integrate with third-party DNS providers as well. And that wraps up our video on internet security, DOH, and DNS filtering.